And with that, I will go ahead and call this meeting to order. I will note for how that we are fully remote today. And so today for our March 25th, 2024 virtual meeting of the Legislative Commission on Pensions and Retirement, I call it to order. Before we begin, I will turn this to Commission Assistant Lisa Deslin to call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So if you will unmute yourselves, so you'll be ready to answer when I call your name, I'd appreciate it. All right, so Chair Herr.
I'm the first one who doesn't follow directions. Present.
It's all right. Representative Nelson. Representative Wolgamott. Representative Berg.
Present.
Representative Cha.
Here.
Representative O'Driscoll.
Present.
Representative Nadeau.
Here.
Go back to Representative Wolgamott. Senator Frantz. Senator Pappas.
Here.
Senator Seeberger.
Here.
Senator Westland.
Here.
Senator Nelson.
Here.
Senator Howe. Senator Rasmussen.
Rasmussen, present.
Just try a couple of these again. Representative Wolgamott. Senator Frantz. Senator Howe. Madam Chair, quorum is present.
Thank you, Ms. Deslin, and a quorum is present. I would just do a little, because this is new to us. I've never actually chaired during the pandemic. And so I want to make sure that we could just kind of do a little bit of housekeeping. So just to make sure that if you would like to ask a question, please raise your hand in the Zoom, and staff will keep track of that. And I will also ask that for those who can, I think especially for commission members, if we could have our cameras on, because I know you all are very busy and we're all doing really, this is sort of crunch time for all of us. But if, during the, especially the bill presentation and testifying, if you have the ability to have your camera on, just so that people know we are here and listening and able and ready. And so I think that should be it for the housekeeping piece of it. And I wanted to just say today, before we start, I don't usually do this, and because I know that our commission always does such a great job in being respectful and being thoughtful, and this commission works very well together in a bipartisan way. I didn't get a chance to check in with all of our members, but I want to just say that really the purpose of today, we really wanted to devote a specific hearing for our teachers. We know that, there have been a lot of suggestions on what we can do to improve on teacher pension plans. And I want it to be in full transparency that I was the one that asked Pew and NASRA to come in today to provide information for us, and to do so in a way that is transparent and also in a fair way, because my objective is not to bring something forward so that we can put a certain perspective in front of everyone, but it is actually to put it in front of us so that we can see where does our state fall within other states that are close to us. And, when I met with Pew, I said to them, I don't want any data presented just so that, to lean one way or another, which Pew does not do. But, just to be very clear that my whole objective is to say, where do we do better than other states? And where is it that we do not do better? And how is it that we can use this information to inform ourselves in our work going into the future? And I really just wanted to be honest with everyone who is watching and participating today, that there is no objective for bringing in our researchers and those who work in this space to present a specific viewpoint. It really is to provide information to this commission so that we can make better decisions in the future. And so with that, I would also just like to turn it over to Vice Chair Frantz for any comments. I know that he and I had a discussion about the importance of today's meeting, and I just want to give him an opportunity to say a few words as well.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members. Thank you, guests. A hallmark of your work on the committee is to bring information forward for all the members to consider. And today is going to be just another example of that. I'm looking forward to it. I just wanted to add, there's always been a focus on educator pensions. This LCPR has wanted to know more, wanted to do more, and wanted to contribute to the overall pension atmosphere for educators. I'd also like to say, Madam Chair and members, where we have been watching, looking, and listening, there's a difference between saying we want to compare ourselves to other states and that there is some impropriety, some conflict of interest. I've been a member of this commission for 7 years, and at no time has anyone ever suggested that any member of TRA staff or plan administration, that anybody at the State Board of Investment has anything that they should be watching to change or do differently as far as ethics, conflict of interest, fees, or any of the like. We remain open and vigilant. That's part of our job. But looking forward to today, where the question is, how do we compare? And if we compare differently, what do we want to do about it? Looking forward to it, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair France. And so with that, we're going to move to our first item on the agenda, which is to hear a presentation from the National Association of State Retirement Administrators. As was discussed at our public meeting in Fergus Falls, we have asked some national pension experts to address the Commission on TRA pensions as it compares to teachers' pensions in other states. Our goal is to move the next agenda item around 9 a.m. So let's see here. I'll turn it over to Keith Brainerd and Alex Brown. And just make sure, Keith and Alex, are you here?
Yes, ma'am.
They are wonderful. Yes. Then I'm going to turn it over to the two of you. And though I wish we could have been in person to see all of this, we're really glad to have you on with us. And I will go ahead and just turn it over to the two of you to start.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. We appreciate the invitation. And we do have some prepared remarks we'd like to share with you. And of course, we're happy to answer questions following that. When thinking about retirement plan design, we think it's helpful to start out with first principles, which chiefly is why provide a retirement benefit in the first place. And the answer is because a retirement benefit is a human resources management tool that helps employers accomplish key stakeholder objectives. The state of Minnesota and its political subdivisions, including counties, cities, school districts, and so forth, are big employers. They are competing with other employers in labor markets. Retirement plan stakeholders include public employees, those employers, the state, its political subdivisions, and so on, and also taxpayers and those who rely on public services. And so what are these stakeholders seeking? Well, in a nutshell, employees, of course, are seeking competitive compensation and retirement security. Employers looking to attract and retain employees, and also to be able to retire employees in an orderly manner, in a time-appropriate manner. And taxpayers, recipients of public services, want their services delivered in a cost-effective manner. Sometimes these objectives can conflict with one another. Sometimes they complement one another. In our view, sound retirement policy should seek to balance these sometimes competing stakeholder objectives. For example, some retirement plan policies reward worker mobility or turnover. Others focus more on retaining long-term experienced workers. Risk-sharing plan designs can distribute effects of risk more evenly between stakeholder groups. The way a retirement plan is designed affects policy outcomes. And this can be seen through policies like vesting, benefit eligibility requirements, years of service required to qualify for retirement, years of age attained, the overall benefit level, such as the retirement multiplier and others, the level of inflation protection, such through a cost of living adjustment that is provided by the plan, and also contribution requirements, especially contribution requirements for the employees. As you understand, a defined benefit plan or a traditional pension is based on many factors and many variables. In our view, fairly assessing the adequacy and efficiency of a pension plan design is complex and defies simple ranking. That is a point that we really want to emphasize. Focusing on a single factor or subset of factors to the exclusion of other factors will lead to inaccurate or misleading conclusions about the effectiveness of the retirement plan design. The full context of the plan design, including vesting periods, multipliers, eligibility criteria, salaries, cost of living adjustments, contribution rates, actuarial assumptions, and other variables must be considered when making such comparisons. It's also important to remember that the retirement benefit is just one component, along with other elements such as salary and other benefits of the total employee compensation package. Just like pensions, salaries and other benefits differ across states. And with those observations as a prelude, I'd like to share a few high-level findings of our research, and my colleague Alex will address some of these comparatives in more detail. A career teacher in Minnesota who works until age 66, which will become 65 effective July 2025, receives a retirement benefit that is comparable with their counterparts in other states. Minnesota's full normal retirement age of 66, going to 65 next year, is among the highest required retirement ages in the nation. Teachers in most other states have options to retire with a full retirement benefit sooner than age 66. In some early retirement scenarios, Minnesota teachers receive a benefit that is lower as a percentage of the full retirement benefit than teachers in other states. But Minnesota teachers vest sooner and qualify for a benefit at an earlier age than their counterparts in many states. Teachers in Minnesota contribute more than teachers in other states for a similar retirement benefit. Minnesota teachers contribute 7.75% of pay, which is scheduled to rise to 8.5% a year from this July. By contrast, the median contribution rate for teachers in other states who also participate in Social Security, as Minnesota teachers do, is 6.3%. NASRA maintains a data set of plan design elements for public pension plans in every state. This includes the core data elements that are used to calculate pension benefits using the basic equation of years of service times final average salary times a multiplier. But in addition to length of service, salary, and the multiplier, there are other factors that affect the level of pension benefits, including the vesting period, the retirement eligibility provisions, specifically the age and years of service that are required to qualify for a retirement benefit, early retirement reduction factors, and the plan's cost of living adjustment. Alex and I examined the Minnesota Teacher Retirement Association through the lens of this plan design data that we compile and maintain, and we repeat that fairly assessing the adequacy and effectiveness of a pension plan design is complex and defies simple ranking. That said, it is possible to make some high-level comparisons with plans in other states. We focus on the plan design for employees hired today, as opposed to older tiers. And with that, I'd like to hand it to my colleague, Alex, who will provide some comparative information about the Minnesota teacher plan.
Mr. Brown.
Thank you. Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to share our perspective with you this morning. So as Keith said, I'm going to run through some very high-level comparisons looking at how Minnesota TRA compares with national and regional counterparts among some of these key elements that Keith just mentioned. And then towards the end of my remarks, I'm really going to try to add emphasis to that point that Keith made, I think, a couple times during his remarks about how difficult comparing plan designs can be and how you have to look at the complete plan design picture in order to make an accurate and fair comparison of plan designs across plans. So starting again at a high level, looking at the vesting period, this is a critical element of a pension plan design because this is the level of service that is required for a participant to qualify to receive an eventual pension benefit. We observe that vesting periods range from 3 years to as high as 10 years, with 5-year vesting being the most common. With a vesting period of 3 years, as Keith mentioned, Minnesota TRA is below the national and the regional average. And this allows Minnesota teachers to qualify for a future benefit sooner than teachers in other states. Another critical element that Keith listed is the benefit multiplier. This is the percentage of final salary for each year of service accrued. We observe that multipliers for Social Security eligible plans range from as low as 1%, and these are generally associated with so-called hybrid plans that combine a more modest defined benefit plan with mandatory or default participation in a defined contribution plan to as high as over 2.3%. It's worth mentioning, so I single out Social Security eligible plans for this metric. Plans whose participants are generally outside Social Security usually earn a higher multiplier, higher percentage of final salary for each year of service to compensate for the lack of Social Security income that those participants won't receive. So that for that reason, they're a poor comparison with the multipliers available to Social Security eligible plans. Some plans use a graded multiplier with a higher percentage of final average salary replaced for those who accrue higher levels of service credit. So in this way, it's an incentive to work longer, to accrue more service, to gain access to a higher benefit multiplier. With a multiplier of 1.9%, Minnesota TRA is consistent with the national and regional average, which nationally we calculated about 1.8% for Social Security eligible plans. Final average salary period. This is the period of compensation that the pension benefit is based on. These periods can range from as low as 24 months or 2 years to as high as 96 months or 8 years. Minnesota TRA has a highest 5-year final average salary period, and this is consistent as well with the national and regional average. It's also worth mentioning there are other important elements to determining pensionable compensation. These include limits on the use of overtime or other non-wage and salary income in the final average salary determination, as well as limitations on the recognition of outsized salary increases in the final average salary calculation, something known as pension spiking. Keith also listed eligibility criteria as a critical element of plan design. Yeah. And so that breaks down 2 ways. Most plans have a eligibility requirement for so-called normal or unreduced retirement eligibility. And then many plans also make a provision for early retirement with a reduced benefit. So focusing first on normal retirement eligibility, this is the age and or level of service that must be attained to qualify to begin receiving an unreduced pension benefit, a full pension benefit. And there can be several variations on normal retirement eligibility depending on the plan. For example, there can be different normal retirement ages corresponding to different levels of service. Rule of normal retirement eligibility, such as Rule of 90, is also present for some plans. And what this means is age and service level must add to the rule of number. So in the case of Rule of 90, age and service must add to 90. Some plans that utilize Rule of retirement eligibility also specify a minimum age, such as Rule of 90 with a minimum age of 60. And then some plans offer normal retirement eligibility at any age with a specified level of service, such as any age with 30 years of service, any age with 35 years of service, and so on. So how does Minnesota TRA compare? Well, Minnesota TRA has one provision for normal retirement eligibility, age 66 going to 65, with 3 years of service vested. Only 15 other states have only one age-based provision for normal unreduced retirement. 4 of these plans offer normal retirement at age 62, 1 at age 63, 6 at 65, and 4 at age 67. And so at age 66 and going to 65, Minnesota is not unique or an outlier in this regard, but most other states do offer multiple paths to a full unreduced benefit at a younger age, corresponding to a greater level of service accrual. And then looking at early retirement eligibility, so this would be the age and or level of service that must be attained to qualify to begin receiving an actuarially reduced pension benefit. The magnitude of the actuarial reduction for early retirement varies among plans. I'll speak to that here in a moment. And also sometimes by age and service level within the same plan. So how does Minnesota teachers compare? Well, Minnesota TRA participants are eligible to retire with an actuarially reduced benefit as early as age 55 upon accruing 3 years of service, upon vesting in the plan. In several other states, teachers must accrue either more service or attain a higher age to retire with a reduced benefit. I mentioned the importance of the actuarial reduction factor for early retirement. So this refers to the percentage decrease from the normal retirement benefit that is applied to a participant's benefit when they retire before attaining eligibility for normal or unreduced retirement. Social Security operates this way. Social Security benefits are reduced by approximately 6.7% per year for the 3 years closest to the participant's normal retirement age, and then another 5% for each year in excess of the 3 years prior to normal retirement age. So how does Minnesota teachers compare on this metric? The actuarial reduction factors for Minnesota teachers, 7% per year from normal retirement age to age 59, plus 4% per year from ages 58 to down to 55, are on the higher side compared to national peers. But the actuarial reduction factors for Minnesota teachers are not the highest that we observe. Indiana teachers, for example, reduces benefits by 11% per year from normal retirement age, plus an additional 5% for each year below age 59. North Dakota reduces benefits by 8% per year from the earlier of age 65 or attainment of Rule of 90. The Utah retirement system reduces benefits by approximately 9% per year between ages 64 and 65, and then another 7% per year between ages 60 and 63. So there are plans out there that do apply higher actuarial reduction factors for those who retire prior to attaining normal retirement eligibility. We do observe, though, that most other plans, including those that I listed with greater actuarial reduction factors, have either lower normal retirement ages or multiple paths to attaining normal retirement eligibility, which can protect at least some participants from experiencing the full impact of those reductions. And it's also worth mentioning that the reduction in the normal retirement age, as Keith mentioned, from 66 to 65 to be implemented July of 2025 here in Minnesota, is going to lessen the impact of the actuarial reduction on Minnesota teachers who retire early by subjecting them to 1 fewer year of benefit reductions. Keith also mentioned the cost of living adjustment, and that's another really important element of public pension plan design. Cost of living adjustment, or COLA, is an increase to one's pension benefit that is intended to at least partially offset the effect of inflation. Inflation, of course, over time reduces the purchasing power of a fixed amount of money and can really eat away. Even a very low level of inflation that accumulates over time can really eat away at the purchasing power of a pension benefit. So a COLA adds significant value to a pension plan. It also adds a cost to the pension plan. It's a benefit element that can be expensive and must be accounted for in the plan's funding arrangement. Some plans don't provide an automatic cost of living adjustment. They provide only what is known as an ad hoc cost of living adjustment, which requires approval from a governing body to be granted. And it may be unpredictable in amount, and it may be irregular in its provision. By contrast, an automatic cost of living adjustment requires no approval to be granted. Minnesota teachers has an automatic COLA of 1%, rising gradually to 1.5% by FY 2028. And we see the Minnesota TRA COLA as consistent with national COLA formulas for plans that provide an automatic COLA. So I want to emphasize an element that Keith mentioned in his remarks, that it's possible to review and compare these individual elements that comprise a pension plan's design, but to compare these elements in isolation results in a diminished perspective about other factors that may be present in the plan design that are also affecting participant outcomes. This may, if you compare one element to another in isolation, it may make one plan look comparatively favorable to another in a way that it would not, perhaps, if all elements or other elements were considered. And I have a couple specific examples from here in the region to share with you that I hope will emphasize this point. So teachers in Michigan can retire with a full unreduced benefit at age 60 with 10 years of service or age 55 with 30 years of service. But it's worth noting that they participate in a hybrid retirement plan with a more modest defined benefit plan and a substantial portion of their retirement income coming from a defined contribution plan. So a substantial portion of their expected retirement benefit is exposed to investment risk, longevity risk, inflation risk, to the extent that it's variable, associated with an individual account defined contribution plan. Teachers in North Dakota can retire with a full unreduced benefit at the rule of 90. So 60 years of age, 30 years of service. Teachers in North Dakota can qualify for a full unreduced retirement. But their benefit receives no guaranteed inflation protection. They have no automatic cost of living adjustment. And those retiring before attaining rule of 90 or age 65 must take an 8% reduction to their benefit for each year. And also another point I want to make regarding that COLA for North Dakota teachers. Like I said, it's not automatic. It's an ad hoc COLA, and I believe the most recent COLA paid to North Dakota retired teachers was 2009. So that's now several years going without any inflationary addition to their benefit. Same situation in Iowa, where teachers can retire at age 62 with 20 years of service or by rule of 88. But basically no Iowa PERS retiree since 1990 has been eligible for any form of COLA or any other form of inflationary benefit increase. South Dakota teachers who retire early can experience lower actuarial reductions for early retirement than Minnesota, just about 5% per year, but they've got a higher normal retirement age 67. And so they may see greater cumulative reductions associated with different career patterns, the further they are from age 67. South Dakota plan design also provides a variable COLA that can be as low as 0, even during periods when inflation spikes higher, such as recent years. And then finally, career teachers in Wisconsin, those who accrue 30 years of service, can retire with full benefits as early as age 57, but their benefits based on a lower multiplier, and their benefit increases in retirement are also variable, including clawing back previously awarded benefit increases for the entire duration of their retirement. So retired teachers in Wisconsin can have a benefit that increases over time. They can get used to that standard of living in retirement. And then some of those previously awarded benefit increases can be rolled back depending on the investment performance of the fund. There are protections against reducing the benefit below the base benefit level, but any of those increases that had been granted previously can be rolled back. So, this is all to say, you sort of have to look at the big picture here when comparing benefits in different states. And so then I'll conclude just by reiterating a point that Keith made earlier. We maintain this information on a comprehensive basis, and we would be happy to work with the commission staff to continue informing this discussion through appropriately contextualized comparatives.
Thank you, Mr. Brown and Mr. Brainerd. I just wanted to ask a quick question. You provided a lot of information, wondering if it's documented somewhere in a presentation so that we could, as a commission, could have some of that information, or can people reach out to you if they want to get the details of what was presented today?
Yes, Madam Chair, we'd be happy to make our remarks available and our resources available, including our objective data that we maintain as part of this plan design. If I could finish with one final remark, and that is, Madam Chair, we maintain and update also an issue brief on spending by states and local governments on pension plans. This brief identifies the amount that each state and all of its political subdivisions spend on pension benefits for employees of state and local government as a percentage of all non-federal spending in that state. And we update that issue brief annually, and our research shows that about 5% of all spending by states and local governments is spent on public pensions for the nation as a whole. Minnesota spends 2.4%. And we ask, does this mean that Minnesota, by definition, has lower retirement benefits? I've heard someone refer to this as Minnesota doing pensions on the cheap. And our response is no. Many factors affect public pension spending levels. Benefit levels are just one of many factors going into this figure, including whether or not employees are participating in Social Security, as my colleague Alex alluded to, the size of unfunded liabilities, state's commitment to paying its full actuarially determined contributions, and so on. Using our research to conclude that Minnesota is somehow doing pensions on the cheap, we find to be simplistic and misleading and really a misrepresentation of the truth. And with that, we'd be happy to answer any other questions. Madam Chair, members of the commission.
Thank you, Mr. Brainerd. We do have a couple of member questions. The first is Senator Nelson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Also, I just wanted to really mention the value of this presentation. All of the factors that were discussed today, and we know that pensions in a sense are annuity, and all of those factors are so critically important. I have two questions. One, as the former commission member mentioned, it'd be wonderful to see a chart of the various states that were mentioned, and or I should say a spreadsheet, so you can see all of those different factors and how they rate on the various states. And then there's one factor that wasn't mentioned, but I can understand why not. It isn't exactly tied to teacher pensions, but pensions, as you mentioned, are one part of compensation. And it would also be interesting on that spreadsheet to look at those handful of states, whichever ones were discussed today, also with an average starting teacher salary or mid-level teacher salary. Or I think looking at that full compensation picture will help us as well. And full disclosure, I'm a tier 2 teacher, so I understand what the issue on a personal level too, but I think it'd be helpful to get that full range of information, all the good information we saw today, but somehow adding in a metric regarding actual compensation, pay, teacher salary compensation. Thank you.
I don't know if that question should go to Mr. Brown or Mr. Brainerd, but if one of you wants to respond.
Well, we don't keep salary information, but if the Minnesota Teacher Retirement Association or the state would like to help us with that, we'd be happy to incorporate that into our data.
Senator Nelson, any follow-up question?
Thank you. We'll ask about that. I think that would be incredibly helpful data. So thank you so much.
Next up is Representative Nadeau.
Thank you, Chair Herr, and thank you, Mr. Brainerd, Mr. Brown, for presenting this. Did you have time, and can you talk about, Minnesota has 2 tiers of teachers. They have teachers that were hired prior to a particular date that are under a career rule, and then we have teachers that were hired after that date that are different. Did you spend any time looking at those differentiations? And are there other states that have different tiers of teachers that qualify for certain for different pensions, full benefits at different times?
Mr. Brainerd?
Representative, we focus our plan design information on employees hired today in the current tier. And much of the reason for that is it helps respond to your second question, which is that many states, perhaps most states, have tiers. And so when you begin accumulating these tiers, there's an enormous amount of data. And of course, in almost every case, new tiers represent lower benefit levels than the tiers that precede them.
Representative Nadeau.
Thank you.
And I just want to let the commission know that I think Pew will be providing some more information regarding the different tiers and states, and that will be helpful maybe to Representative Nadeau's question. Any further discussion on this topic? No further discussion. I want to thank Mr. Brainerd and Mr. Brown for this information and look forward to receiving some of the information for future use in our work. Thank you so much. I will now move us onto the second presentation by Pew Charitable Trust. And our goal is to hopefully get this wrapped up by 9:15, but we're a little bit behind, but it's good discussion. So we'll make do with what we have here. And so with that, I will turn it over to Corinne Hall and Molly Mills. And thank you for being here today.
Good morning, Madam Chairperson and members of the committee. My name is Corinne Hall. I'm going to start, and my colleague Molly Mills and I will both be speaking about pensions. She's going to bring up a PowerPoint, I believe, if the share, yep, it looks like we're on our way. So I will go ahead and start. So like I said, my name is Corinne Hall. I'm a manager with the Pew Charitable Trust. And Molly Mills is a principal researcher within our project, primarily focused on public sector pensions. Next slide. Today we'll be covering 3 areas: the practices of successful retirement systems, retirement security metrics related to those practices, and offering you a comparison of Minnesota TRA benefits. Next slide. So for those of you who don't know, let me give you a little bit of background about Pew. We are a nonpartisan organization that at any given time is working on 40 evidence-based projects relevant to global public policy issues. Molly and I both work within the State Fiscal Policy Project that works on a variety of economic and government performance initiatives that affect state and local governments, such as public pensions, infrastructure, tax performance, and rainy day funds. Next slide.
Yes, Paul, just one quick question. It looks like those slides are not advancing on our screen, so I just want to make sure that we're moving through the slides as well.
Yeah.
Are all the members, are you able to see the screens as she's asking to go to the next slide, or is it just me?
Madam Chair, I can see the screen, but it is not advancing. If it's supposed to, that's not happening on my screen.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, if it is helpful, I can share the screen. I do have the document up and ready to go.
I think that might work better, Ms. Hall. Is that okay? We'll put it up and
fine.
Thank you.
We'll try that. And if that doesn't work, I have it as well. So
give me
Molly
just a second.
Content than I do. So I wanted to give her driving, but technology is always fun, isn't it, friends?
We're just so glad that the snow didn't keep us off from still meeting today. So.
Well, look at that. Well, thank you very much. I think we are on slide, I think it's 4. And if it's helpful, I can try again with PowerPoint. Maybe we'll try that when Molly goes. But I can get through my portion relatively quickly. So, all right. So we'll try it this way. Our public pension research provides 50 state trends in public retirement systems and retiree healthcare benefits, covering funding, investments, governance, plan design, and retirement security. In addition to our research, we provide technical assistance to policymakers. Since 2011, we've worked in 25 states and local jurisdictions and have supported them in saving an estimated $5 billion in unfunded liabilities over the past 10 years, while working to preserve retirement security for workers through our retirement security framework. Our project has remained evidence-based and data-driven, but rather than an academic focus of our research, we've remained one of applied research geared towards policy change and implementation. Next slide. There we go. Over the past 5 years, we have been working on examining certain 50 state trends in public pensions that, while different from states, shared common practices that could be replicated in other plans, leading to more successful pension systems. Slide. So first and foremost, this research shares that there's no one size fits all for solutions. All states are different, and therefore all solutions are different. Beginning this research, we did identify 3 well-funded states with stable cost, strong retirement security practices, but they all approached it differently. For example, the Wisconsin retirement system has a traditional benefit plan that distributes investment shortfalls and gains so that employers, employees, and retirees can share in the highs and lows. South Dakota's retirement system is a hybrid defined benefit plan with set employer cost, a statutory commitment to full funding, and a commitment to retirement security across the workforce. The Tennessee system is a hybrid plan with an innovative funding design and strategies for increasing retirement readiness. Next slide. So through examining these 3 systems, we led to identifying 5 exemplary systems. While each system employs a different benefit design, they offer paths to retirement security for all workers within clearly defined cost targets, have a plan for managing risk, have a commitment to ensuring policies are transparent and clearly communicated to stakeholders. These practices offer insights into how states achieve success, a roadmap for policymakers in other states looking to improve pension policies, and a benchmark for assessing success. Next slide. I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Molly Mills, so she can talk about retirement security metrics.
Thank you, Corinne. As Corinne mentioned, my name is Molly Mills, and I'll be talking about Pew's retirement security metrics and where TRA falls in terms of teacher retirement plan benefits. Next slide, please. So to look at how well a system provides retirement security across the workforce, we use two primary metrics. The first is the replacement income ratio, or the replacement rate, which is the percentage of a worker's pre-retirement take-home pay that is paid out by employer plans and, when available, Social Security. We also look at the savings rate metric, which captures the percent of annual salary a worker can withdraw upon separation. A worker's savings rate is often just their employee contributions, but in some cases, workers can also claim some amount of employer contributions made on their behalf. In addition, they can withdraw the interest credited to their account by their employer. Next slide, please. This chart illustrates how we calculate our replacement. This chart illustrates how we calculate our replacement rate metric. It shows the replacement rate for a career worker in a hypothetical defined benefit plan with Social Security. The defined benefit plan provides a base replacement rate of 59%. After we calculate the base benefit, we account for the impact of inflation during retirement. While most plans offer a cost of living adjustment, this benefit usually isn't sufficient to completely offset inflation throughout retirement. So we adjust the replacement rate accordingly. That decreases this worker's replacement rate to 52%. Next, we add in an estimated Social Security benefit. That brings this worker's replacement rate to 85%. And finally, we adjust for take-home pay since retirees no longer contribute to their retirement plan or to Medicare and Social Security. This raises the final replacement rate for this hypothetical worker to 100%. Next slide, please. Using the methodology from the last slide, this graphic shows the replacement rates for the 36 retirement systems that cover teachers and participate in Social Security. It shows that almost all teacher plans plus Social Security replace at least 80% of a worker's final take-home pay. We found that 31 out of the 36 plans we looked at provide a replacement rate of at least 80%, and nearly half provide full replacement income or more. Based on this preliminary data and our assumptions, the latest tier of Minnesota TRA, which is circled in the chart, provides a replacement rate of around 108% of take-home pay, putting it in the top third of all teacher plans and above the average of around 100%. Next slide, please. While most plans inherently provide adequate retirement security for career workers, the results are more mixed for workers with multiple employers over their careers. Vested employees can typically choose between taking their contributions plus interest or leaving their account with the state until they reach retirement eligibility. However, those benefits typically lose value over time because they're generally not adjusted for any inflation that occurs after the employee leaves the job. In some cases, withdrawing money from the retirement system may be a better financial decision. We use the savings rate metric to help evaluate how well workers who separate early or mid-career and withdraw their money from the retirement system are prepared for retirement. Next slide, please. This graphic shows the savings rates for 36 retirement systems that cover teachers and participate in Social Security. The blue bars show the level of employee contributions that workers have access to at separation, and the orange bars show the level of employer contributions they have access to. The red dotted lines are at the 10 and 12% benchmarks. We used expert recommendations to land at a minimum benchmark of 10%, with most experts recommending that people save 12 to 15% of their annual salary. Only 9 of the 36 plans meet the minimum 10% benchmark, and only 4 meet the 12% benchmark. The average is 8%. Separating TRA employees that choose to withdraw contributions are only entitled to their own contributions plus interest, giving them a savings rate of 7.75%, slightly below the average of 8% and falling below our minimum 10% benchmark. Next slide, please. Lastly, we use a framework known as retirement readiness to assess the full picture of how well workers are prepared to meet their financial needs in retirement. The framework is made up of 4 components. The first component is plan design. Plans should be designed to meet replacement rate and savings rate goals, so they should provide replacement rates of at least 90% and savings rates of at least 10%. The second component is availability of supplemental retirement plans. Although most public retirement systems offer optional supplemental plans, very few ensure that workers take advantage of them. Plans that have high participation rates have typically invested in employee education or have automatic savings features such as automatic enrollment or escalation. The third component is availability of online participant tools. At a minimum, this should include features such as personalized calculators or dashboards that present real-time information about predicted retirement income. Tools may also include online workshops and webinars, educational materials, or informational videos. And the fourth component is access to financial advisors that can provide workers with one-on-one financial and retirement-related advice. This advice should go beyond basic plan information to ensure that workers have what they need to make informed financial decisions. Next slide, please. This table shows how TRA performs under each of our retirement security metrics. As I mentioned before, TRA performs above average on our replacement income metric and slightly below average on our savings rate metric. In terms of the other components of retirement readiness, TRA has several helpful tools on the website, including informational videos and a benefit estimate calculator. TRA also appears to offer in-person or virtual counseling sessions, but it's unclear from what's publicly available whether members have access to personal financial advice. It's also unclear how readily members have access to supplemental savings plans. Next slide, please. And you can go to the next one. Thank you. Can others see the map? Okay.
It's just black on our end here. Maybe you can just explain what the should be, Molly, Ms. Mills.
Yeah, thank you. So this was supposed to be a map of retirement system plan designs that cover teachers. So it shows the default plan in each state. Minnesota teachers are covered by a defined benefit plan. That's the most common type of plan for teachers. 30 of the plans are defined benefit. 8 are defined benefit with some kind of risk sharing. So that may include variable cost of living adjustments, employee contribution risk sharing, or both. And then there are also 3 defined contribution plans, 1 cash balance plan, and 8 hybrid plans that have both defined benefit and defined contribution components. So there's the map. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to touch briefly on teacher retirement system reforms made since the Great Recession. Following the Great Recession, nearly all states passed significant reforms to their state and teacher retirement systems. At least 40 retirement systems covering teachers adopted a benefit tier for new workers between 2008 and 2023. In 45 out of 50 states, the plan covering teachers has multiple tiers. TRA is unusual in that it didn't adopt a new tier after 2008. During that time period, many teacher retirement systems changed benefits for both current and new workers. About 3/4 increased age or service requirements, more than 2/3 increased employee contributions, nearly half reduced the multiplier or benefits, and about half reduced or eliminated the COLA. Next slide, please. This table compares TRA benefits with the other 25 defined benefit retirement systems that cover teachers and participate in Social Security. TRA's multiplier for years of service on or after July 1st, 2006 is 1.9%, which is right around the average of 1.85%. TRA's employee contribution is very slightly above the average of 7.5% at 7.75% and increasing to 8% on July 1st, 2025. Using 5 years for the final average salary calculation, like TRA does, is the most common among other DB pension plans. And finally, the TRA cost of living adjustment is currently 1.1% and is scheduled to gradually increase to 1.5% by January 1st, 2028. About half of other teacher retirement systems offer some kind of annual COLA, ranging from 1 to 3%. Next slide, please. This table compares TRA's retirement eligibility to the other 45 defined benefit retirement systems that cover teachers and participate in Social Security. TRA Tier 1 provides more paths to normal retirement eligibility than Tier 2, which currently has an age requirement of 66. The average among other defined benefit or hybrid teachers pension systems, regardless of years of service, is 64, with a minimum of 60 and a maximum of 67. The Tier 2 early retirement age is 55. This is slightly below the average of 57, with a minimum age of 50 and a maximum of 62. The Tier 1 early retirement penalty is a 3% reduction for each year under normal retirement age. Tier 2 members are entitled to a 3% reduction if they meet the 62 and 30 years of service requirement, but for members that retire earlier, the reduction is 4% per year from age 55 to 59 and 7% per year from age 59 to 66. The average early retirement penalty among other teacher plans is a 5% reduction per year with a minimum of 3% and an annual maximum of 8%. Next slide, please. This table compares TRA Tier 2 to teacher benefits in North Dakota, South Dakota, Wisconsin, and Iowa. TRA's Tier 2 multiplier exceeds South Dakota and Wisconsin's multipliers and only falls slightly behind North Dakota's and Iowa's. TRA's employee contribution is higher than South Dakota's, Wisconsin's, and Iowa's, but is lower than North Dakota's. Like TRA, most states use 5 years to calculate final average salary. Cost of living adjustments, on the other hand, are kind of a mixed bag regionally. Two nearby states, North Dakota and Iowa, do not offer regular COLAs. South Dakota and Wisconsin both regularly offer COLAs, but they are subject to adequate funded status or investment performance. TRA currently has a normal retirement age of 66. South Dakota has a less generous retirement age of 67, but North Dakota, Wisconsin, and Iowa all provide multiple retirement eligibility options, making them a little bit more flexible than TRA. TRA's early retirement eligibility age is very comparable to surrounding states. Early retirement penalties are mixed, ranging from 3 to 8%, with TRA falling somewhere in the middle. Next slide, please. And finally, I just wanted to provide a brief overview of COLA benefits across teacher retirement systems. TRA currently provides a 1.1% COLA, which is increasing by 0.1% each year until it reaches 1.5% in 2028. 11 of 25 defined benefit plans that cover teachers and participate in Social Security do not provide an automatic COLA on an annual basis. 6 of the remaining 14 plans provide automatic COLAs, 3 base their COLAs on CPI, and 5 tie their COLAs to investment returns or funded status. Prior to 2018 legislation, TRA's COLA was partially tied to funded ratio, and I just wanted to note that COLAs that vary in response to investment returns or funded ratio can help manage unexpected costs. And that is all we have prepared for you today. So we're happy to take questions about anything we just discussed or follow up with any information that would be helpful.
Madam Chair, I think you're muted.
Vice Chair France.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for the presentation. I don't know if this is possible, but of course, one of our goals in 2018 was to improve funding status across all the fund categories. Can you share with us, Ms. Hall, Ms. Mills, your sense of how these other states may be doing in their hope, I presume, to improve their funding status? And I realize we're talking about a lot of different categories, but of course, what we're looking for in TRA is to take care of our teachers, but also to protect the funding status and help hopefully get it where we targeted for 2048. If there's no way to answer that, please signal by saying, Senator, there's no way I can answer that.
Thank you, Madam Chair, as a member of the committees, members of the committee. In terms of funding ratios around the states, I can absolutely answer that. I can't give you that answer right now, but I can send you guys some information that will answer those questions for you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator France. And I just had a really quick question because I don't think there is anybody else with their. Does anybody else have any questions for our presenters from Pew? Okay, if not, I will just say quick. I want to make sure that I understand. I think that because we really do want to do our best to understand our own teacher tiers. And what I think that I heard you all present, and also Nazra said the same thing, is that many states have many more tiers than we do. I guess I was just curious, how do we compare for the number of tiers? And I guess to understand that when states create these tiers, it's usually because they're reducing benefits. So each tier has less benefits. If you could confirm that, and then maybe just also let us know where we sort of fall with the number of tiers that we have versus number of tiers other plans might have. Ms. Hall.
Sure, I'm happy to address that. When we were looking at that after our call last week, majority of states have at least 2 tiers. In terms of specific, it varies from there, and that's something that I would probably like to give you as a follow-up on paper, so you can have it in front of you.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Appreciate that. Representative Wolgamott.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you very much to all the presenters. I'm looking at this data, and I just wanted to get some of your feedback on the fairness of teachers having to pay more into their own pensions. And I'm especially thinking about mid-career teachers. I worry that increasing already historic employee contributions to 10% of each small paycheck is just so detrimental to our recruitment and retention efforts. And I just want to make sure that that's not the only road to a fair pension for some teachers, because I see it creating a more unfair situation for every other teacher. So just would appreciate hearing some insight from the presenters on that, Madam Chair.
Ms. Hall?
I can start off on that. I think that I'm going to reiterate something I said earlier in our presentation, which is no one size fits all. And recruitment and retention is by far one of the biggest conversations that comes up in every conference that I go to and in meeting rooms, sitting and speaking with legislators. And I wouldn't want to give you an off-the-cuff answer about what solution would be best for the Minnesota teachers plan if you're asking me if that's the only one, because that I am not an expert in Minnesota pensions. That is what the legislators in Minnesota are good for. But if that is of interest, I'm happy to have that conversation with you offline and provide you some context for what other states are doing, if that is helpful.
Representative Wolgamott. Oh, go ahead, Ms. Mills.
Sorry, I can also add, I'll just add some data maybe to help out, that in terms of savings rates, which is where we get those 10 to 12% benchmarks, I will say that access to greater employer contributions also plays a key role in pushing savings rates above benchmarks. So in 6 of 9 systems with savings rates of at least 10%, they do provide separating workers with some kind of employer contributions, compared to only 7 of 27 systems that provide savings rates of below 10%. So I think, as Corinne mentioned, there's no one size fits all, and I think that access to those employer contributions plays a key role. It's not just necessarily raising employee contributions.
Representative Wolgamott.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thank you for those responses to our presenters. And Ms. Hall, I definitely would look forward to talking more with you about this offline. And, I know that we're going to get into this more, Madam Chair, with myself and Representative Nadeau's bill presentations here in just a minute. But just want to acknowledge that there's kind of a disconnect between what we're seeing in this data and what teachers and frankly public workers are experiencing all across the state. And I'm hopeful that we can continue to work as a commission and work with the experts that have been presenting today to get that information and continue to build off the good work that we did last session of making historic investments in our pensions and making sure that we can, as Minnesotans, we want to live up to the target motto. We want people for our pensions to expect more and pay less, and make sure that our teachers and our work are connecting the data that's out there with what's going on in people's lives. So appreciate, again, the time and thoughtfulness put in by the presenters, and look forward to working with all of you to build off of this and make sure we're delivering for Minnesotans' retirement plans. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Wolgamott, for those comments. And it is very true that, and always, there is, our Minnesotans are feeling a pinch with all of the economic factors around them. And you're right, oftentimes there is a disconnect with that. And how do we ensure that, we are putting our teachers first? And I greatly appreciate that comment. I do just want to ask either Ms. Hall or Ms. Mills, and this may even be for Mr. Brainerd or Mr. Brown, but I guess I should have maybe asked this prior to this, but do other states have a dedicated revenue source to fund their pensions, or does their pensions come out of their general fund? I don't know if anybody has an answer to that question.
Madam Chair, this is Keith Brainerd, and I'll address that. And the answer is some states do that. None do it to completely fund the pension. There are a number of states that have enacted policies such as committing all or a portion of a budget surplus to pay down unfunded liabilities. There are some dedicated excise taxes, such as in Louisiana and Montana, that use oil and gas and coal, respectively, to help fund their pension liabilities. One of the most interesting examples is New Jersey, which handed over the proceeds of its state lottery to the pension plan for a 30-year period. They're in about year 10 of that or so, and that has really helped the state improve its contributions and its overall pension funding level. So it's a mixed bag, but we are seeing a growing number of states enact dedicated funding sources to their pension plans.
Thank you, Mr. Brainerd. That is very helpful. And I do not see that there are any further questions regarding our for our presenters. So I just want to thank Ms. Hall and Ms. Mills for the presentation. And members, you do have their information, the presentation that was provided, and we will follow up to see if there's written materials we can get from Mr. Brainerd and Mr. Brown. But again, thank you to all four of you for presenting information today. It has been very helpful for the commission. We are now going to move to our next item on the agenda, and that is House File 3972 from Representative Wolgamott and Senate File 4196 from Senator Gustafson. Representative Wolgamott, I will invite you to make a motion for the bill, and both of you can provide opening remarks after the motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that we lay over House File 3972 and Senate File 4169.
Thank you, Representative Wolgamott. And if you and Senator Gustafson have any opening remarks before we have staff explain the bill.
Madam Chair and fellow LCPR members, thank you for the opportunity to present the TRA penalty reduction bill that we're bringing forward today. Madam Chair, I'm bringing this bill forward because as a high school football coach for 11 seasons, as the father of 2 daughters who attend our public schools, and the grandson of a teacher pensions have been a front and center concern for me and my family for a long time. I've heard, as I'm sure all of us have, we've heard from hundreds, if not thousands, of hardworking teachers on this issue. And it's so impressive, the movement that educators have built for retirement stability. And we know that the problems they're facing are real and need to be addressed. So I couldn't be more proud to advocate for them and with them for a fair pension that values the work that they do for our students and their contributions to Minnesota's workforce. Just a quick personal story I'd like to share with you, Madam Chair and members. It's a story of my grandma Hilda. My grandma Hilda was a public school teacher for 42 years, and she was able to retire with the rule of 90. And having that opportunity to retire under the rule of 90 was a really valuable component of teacher compensation for my grandma and for Minnesotans in the past. And our family has been able to see firsthand the benefit of a great retirement for my grandma. It allowed her to spend time with our family and get some much needed and well-deserved rest after a long and challenging and rewarding career. And as I mentioned, over the past 11 years, I've had the privilege of coaching high school football at Sauk Rapids Rice High School. And I've been honored to work with incredible coaches who are also educators. They're extremely dedicated, passionate, and hardworking teachers who go above and beyond to ensure that their students succeed both in the classroom and outside of the classroom. But unfortunately, they're part of the Tier 2 educators. And as a result, they often share concerns with me about their retirement security. So making sure that they're set up for success in their lives by improving their pensions is the proper fitting way to honor their service. And it's going to help us retain educators and make sure they're receiving the benefit they deserve for what they do for our students. This bill that we're bringing forward today, Madam Chair and members, was built in collaboration with the educators that you'll hear from today. And our goal is to have targeted relief to those affected by the worst parts of the TRA Tier 2 plan, the educators who need to retire before the age of 62. Educators who need to retire then are set up to lose 40%, even 50% of their pensions. And that's a penalty that follows them for the rest of their life. So we're putting this bill forward to mitigate those losses and restore thousands of dollars to a teacher's pension earnings if they need the flexibility to retire early by dropping penalties that are up to 7% down to 3% for ages 58 through 62. This gives them a choice when the current penalties at those ages are prohibitive, regardless of life concerns that may come up. We want to make sure that we are committed to fighting for state funding to cover all needed teacher pension improvements. We know that teachers, as we mentioned earlier, already pay a historic amount into their pension while losing benefits over the years for the sustainability of the plan. Teachers have already given enough, and this bill is a fix that we need through state funding. In closing, Madam Chair, I just want to say that pensions packages should serve as incentive to our teachers, something they look forward to, not a deterrence to have them leave the profession. Pensions are one of the only tools that we have in the public sector to compete with the private sector. And I want the teachers of my daughter's schools to be the best and the brightest Minnesotans who are attracted to the profession and know that their crucial work is valued and reflected by our state. That's why we're bringing this bill forward. That's why I urge your support. And now, Madam Chair, I'm pleased to turn it over to my co-author, Senator Gustafson, and then look forward to hearing the remarks from our teachers who are on to testify today. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Wolgamott. Senator Gustafson.
Thank you very much. I think Representative Wolgamott did a good job of walking through the bill. I'll just add that as a current public school teacher and a current Tier 2 teacher, I see a drastic difference in how we treat publicly funded employees. While I believe that all publicly funded employees, such as our law enforcement, city officials, do a great job and deserve the salary that they get, we see an inconsistency when it comes to teachers. Our pay is lower, our benefits are lower when it comes to our retirement, and it is a profession that often costs us a lot in training. Right? We all have to have a 4-year degree. Many of us go on to get a master's degree. Some of us will never see $50,000 a year salary. And the one thing that we can usually count on are decent benefits and hopefully a decent retirement. Over the years, that's been under attack a little bit. We want to make sure that teachers are respected, both not just while they're active teachers, but that they have something to look forward to in retirement that takes care of them. And as I always say, as we sit on the Education Finance Committee, all of our policies are student-centered, as they should be. But we can't forget that teacher support is student support. So taking care of our teachers is taking care of our students. I thank the committee for their time and consideration. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Senator Gustafson. And I will now turn it to Executive Director Susan Linchesky, if she could add on to details of the bill, and in addition to what Representative Wolgamott has already shared. Ms. Linchesky.
Thank you, Chair. Susan Linchesky, Director of the Legislative Commission on Pensions and Retirement. I would refer you to my memo, the staff memo that was sent out, I believe, late Friday. It does provide an example of how the early retirement factors or reductions work currently and then under the bill. The only thing I would note is that the bill takes effect on July 1, 2025, and at that point, the normal retirement age for teachers will go from 66 to 65. So the reductions I'm showing in the memo actually should begin at age 65. And the other item I wanted to note is in the memo, I noted that there were a couple of cost estimates that I couldn't reconcile. I did hear from TRA over the weekend. And I just want to note that using FY 2025 payroll, the annual cost of the changes will be $66.7 million. So going to the bill very quickly, Section 1 is the funding mechanism for the school districts. This would increase the pension adjustment revenue for school districts that are going to be then paying a higher employer contribution rate to fund that. The employer contribution rate increase is in Section 2 of the bill. Section 3 shows the change in the early retirement reduction. It gets a little complicated, but currently you'll see here in the memo that Lisa is showing on the screen, the reduction occurs for each year that the early retirement age precedes normal retirement age. So if you retire, say at age 64, you're going to have a reduction for just 1 year from 65 to 64, and that reduction is 7%. You can see here under current law, the reduction goes down to age 59 at 7%, and then prior to age 59, from 59 through 55, the reduction is 4%. The bill changes that to be from age 65 to 63, there's a 7% per year reduction, from 63 to 58, a 3% per year, and then from 58 to 55, a 7% reduction. Finally, Section 4 of the bill
provides an appropriation to the employers that are not school districts. And by the way, all of the appropriations and employer contribution increases are currently blank in the bill. But now that we know the cost, they could eventually be filled in. As I noted earlier, these changes all will take effect on July 1, 2025. Chair Hurd, those are my comments on the bill.
Thank you, Director Lunchevsky. And I know we will go ahead. Jay Staffel is not here today. So Ms. Holly Dayton, you will be our first testifier. She is the legislative liaison for TRA. When you are ready, please state your name and begin your testimony.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, good morning again, Madam Chair and Commission members. For the record, my name is Holly Dayton. I'm the legislative liaison for TRA. Thank you for this opportunity to provide just brief comments on this bill. First, on behalf of the TRA board, I want to thank Chair Herr and the Pension Commission and Commission staff for their focus on teacher pensions today and over the last 2 years. We are eager to continue our involvement with you and our stakeholders as these discussions continue. Turning to the bill, House File 3972 or Senate File 4196 is a bill that would increase benefits by lowering early retirement reduction factors. It provides for a state-funded employer contribution increase to cover this cost. The ultimate employer contribution rate and appropriation amounts, as noted, are blank currently in the bill. And one of the primary concerns of the TRA board is that any benefit improvement be fully funded. The bill would increase TRA's unfunded liability by an increase of about $606 million. And the actuaries have determined that the annual cost of the benefit improvement would be 1.06% of our covered payroll, which would equate to about $66.7 million using projected fiscal year 2025 covered payroll. And our covered payroll is projected to increase by 3% per year compounded. If this bill goes forward, we strongly urge the Commission to amend the bill so that the benefit improvement is fully funded. And we thank you again for your attention to teacher pensions this session. And we look forward to continuing discussions with you and others.
Thank you, Ms. Dayton. And I will just direct the Commission that the documents for today, usually we print them out for you in the packets, but they are online. And Ms. Deslin did put a link to that so that if you want to pull up all the documents that we'll be going through today. Next, we do have Rodney Rowe, Secretary and Treasurer of Education, Minnesota. Please identify yourself and begin.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you.
All right. Good morning, Chair Herr and members of the LCPR committee, and thank you for your time to hear me this morning on a very important issue. My name is Rodney Rowe. I'm an elementary teacher on leave from Worthington, and I serve as the Secretary Treasurer of Education, Minnesota. Pensions are a public good. They're a workers' benefit that was fought for decades ago. So workers have a retirement that takes care of them after years of service in essential and challenging professions. They're a critical recruitment and retention tool, and young professionals in our current society are looking for the financial stability. You've heard from thousands of teachers at rallies, at town halls, at field hearings, at committee hearings like this, in your email inbox, and more. One of the top priorities for Minnesota teachers is improving their pension plan. We all know teachers don't get paid enough for the important work they do. Teachers have experienced double-digit healthcare cost hikes in the last few years. Teachers work hours and hours of overtime each week with no additional pay. They are currently supporting students through their hardest years after COVID, addressing learning loss and dealing with increased mental health needs. Teachers are essential workers in our communities who support countless families. The public knows all of this, and for a long time, the public has thought at least they have good pensions. People are starting to realize that our pensions are not what they used to be. 9 in 10 schools can't find teachers to fill open needed positions for student learning. Teacher pensions need to become the recruitment and retention tool that they were created to be. Teachers are leaving the profession to build retirement plans in other professions. Young people who would have been teachers are taking other paths because they are concerned that they won't have the flexibility or the dignity to retire. Some teachers who used to encourage students to become teachers are now saying it's not worth it. Some have lost hope in getting the investments that are needed. One of our Lakeville teachers said to her school board just a few days ago, she's a third-generation teacher, and I'm not encouraging the fourth generation because of these compensation issues, including pensions. These changes need to happen through state funding. Otherwise, teacher compensation, which is already stretched thin, will be hurt by putting any new increases on employees to pay for it. The penalty reduction bill was created through months of work by a group of 26 teachers from across the state with diverse experiences. This bill was created in recognition of teachers needed in a non-budget year to do the most good with the dollars that would be available. This bill targets where the Tier 2 plan is most inflexible, where we're least competitive with other surrounding states before the age of 62. It mitigates the extreme 7% penalties, huge penalties that no other plan in Minnesota has, to restore thousands of dollars to the benefit of the teachers who will need that flexibility to choose when to draw their pensions. Teachers who started at the age of 22 in the fall of 1989, right after the line was created to form the two tiers, are now age 56 and 57, and at what would have been their rule of 90 year. Some are experiencing health problems, or they're having trouble keeping up with the young kids at school. They need the flexibility in deciding when to draw their retirement. They're looking at losing more than 40% of their benefit to penalties. And right now, because they can't stay longer. With this bill, the penalty, if they need to leave at age 58, drops from being 46% to 29%. This is just simply one step towards a long-term plan. We all should work together for a stable and secure pension for all Minnesota educators. That brings in our new teachers into the profession, it retains our current workforce, and it gives teachers something to look forward to, a retirement that they earned after doing an incredible, challenging, and important job for Minnesota. We can do the work together. We just need each of you, every legislator, to see this urgent need and put real state investment towards it. We can't do pensions on the cheap. And if we care about teachers, the good of our public education system and addressing the educator shortage, it's
I'm going to ask you to wrap up. Mr. Rowe, I'm going to ask you to wrap up.
And from all of us at Education Minnesota, thank you for your time. Thank you for hearing this bill. Chair Her, also for your continued fight for the investments that pensions actually need. Thank you, and I ask you to support this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Rowe. And my apologies. Just so that everyone knows, we have been given the okay to go over. I know that this is a busy time for the legislators. And if you do need to drop off to go to your other committees or meetings, please feel free to do so. And I am going to ask if Mr. I might say the last name correct here, Ryan Farrick and Blaine Novak, if we could keep the comments to 3 minutes, that would be helpful and ensure that we get to hear the next bill as well. So if you can go ahead and identify yourself, Mr. Is it Farrick? And if you identify yourself and then begin.
Sure. I'm Ryan Farrick, Chair of Education Minnesota's Pension Advisory Group, also local president of St. Francis Area Schools, currently celebrating the strangest spring break we've had in a while. So I appreciate the time today to speak. Our current pensions are making the educator shortage worse. We've shown up time and time again. I've heard from countless mid-career educators who are considering leaving public work because of the pension issue. While we work in understaffed buildings, they feel undervalued from the state. Many of our friends have left the profession. Even through all the hardship, we continue to show up day after day to do our absolute best for our students. But our jobs, our ability to meet students' needs are impossible as we have less and less physical professional educators in our buildings. Every elected leader in our state should be working on this issue. Like the author said, the penalty reduction bill is our preferred way to move forward this year. The biggest flaw, the place where Tier 2 plan hurts teachers the most, is before the age of 62. This is also where we become uncompetitive with other states in a tight supplemental budget. This is also where we become this is a scalable bill that could use any amount of ongoing funds to provide targeted relief for our teachers closest to the Rule of 90 line. Teachers who are retiring soon, who are set up to lose almost half of their yearly benefit for the rest of their life. This rewrites some of the harmful changes that were enacted in earlier years that jumped to a 7% penalty to put the current 6230 reduced threshold in place in 2013. 6230 is currently the strongest part of the Tier 2 plan, and the money paid out to educators who make this are near Tier 1 members receive retiring at that age, and is comparable to our neighboring districts if they can make it to 62. This bill was crafted in response to the educators who ask, I don't know if I can make it that long. This bill would restore thousands of dollars to those educators who need to retire before the age of 62. Many changes have been made over the years that balances the underfunding of our pension on our backs. After the tiers were created in 1989, TRA reached 100% funding at the turn of the millennium, which dropped the employee and employer contributions significantly. We can trace underfunding back to that very moment. I ask you ensure that it doesn't happen again. Then 2008, the financial crisis happened. Its effects still reverberate today. To save money for the plan, legislators chose to increase penalties for early retirement, increase contributions, and take away deferred augmentation. Following an institute of a COLA delay on Tier 2 educators, which wasn't discussed prior, goes into place this year. The underfunding of TRA puts us in a precarious position where our members are advocating for what we need, but we also need to make sure the plan is sustainable for future generations. Educators have already given so much to our pension, to our students, and Minnesota. We need our retirement. The retirement that we've earned needs to be restored through state funding. If our elected leaders and allies at the Capitol can address the real concerns about worker pension benefits with real solutions each year, we'll be moving towards the respect educators deserve and a more sustainable quality workforce in our schools. Students deserve it. That work must continue this session with you, because we all know students can't run without educators. Students can't learn without educators. And without educators, our communities will suffer. Please do everything you can to work with us to fix this problem. Please support the bill today. I thank all of the legislators who continue to work on this issue at the forefront. We can make this change we need together when we work together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Farrick. And up next is Blaine Novak, Superintendent of New York Mills. Mr. Novak, if you could identify yourself and begin.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, good morning. I'm Blaine Novak, Superintendent of the New York Mills Public School. Thank you for this opportunity to testify this morning on House File 3972, Senate File 4196. Before we can address the teacher pension issue, we must first recognize and understand the problem that exists. The fact that you are specifically hearing Minnesota teacher retirement pension bills today indicates that we recognize a problem with the Minnesota teacher retirement system and that a severe inequity exists between our Tier 1 and our Tier 2 educators. I appreciate your intentionality to this matter. As we work to address the pension inequity in Minnesota, we must put forth a solution that serves all educators in our state, whether they are career educators, teachers who came to the field later in life, or our teachers who are in second career, allowing them to access their retirement funds when they reach retirement without penalty. House File 3972, Senate File 4196 can be applauded for decreasing the early retirement discounts currently in place with TRA. The current early retirement discounts are excessively punitive and not actuarially sound, and this legislation accurately addresses that concern. This bill also does a nice job of addressing those who became educators later in life, such as second career teachers or those who came to Minnesota after teaching in another state. It allows them to access the retirement funds when they reach retirement age without penalty. As we continue to work toward an equitable pension, we must remember that reform must also consider those who have been lifetime educators by honoring those who began their teaching careers immediately after college and have 35 years or more working in public education. These educators deserve a career rule. Pension reform must work toward incentivizing college students to pursue education as a profession, which will then reward their work as public servants. House File 3972, Senate File 4196 is a start to addressing the current disparity between our Tier 1 and Tier 2 educators, mainly by reducing the excessive discounts. Moving forward, I ask that we take measures such as including a career rule to attract and retain new and current educators. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Novak. We will now move on to member questions. Members, do you have any questions? Please raise your hand. Senator Rasmussen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a question for Mr. Rowe, if he's available for a question.
Mr. Rowe? Let me see if I can't see you on here.
Yes.
Go ahead and ask Senator Rasmussen.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Rowe. Last year, we saw in the governor's budget proposal, no money for Tier 2 pension reform. This year in the governor's supplemental budget proposal, I didn't see any money for Tier 2 teacher pension reform. And so, Mr. Rowe, I was wondering if you know, in your conversations or Education Minnesota's conversations with the governor on those budget proposals, if you could explain your thoughts on why nothing was included for Tier 2 teachers 2 years in a row from the governor's budget.
Mr. Rowe.
Certainly, and thank you, Senator. And I think if Adam is on here, I think I'm going to push this question his way because I think he's the one that will probably hold the answer for you.
Adam, if you, and I, is that
Adam Janiak?
Yes, I am.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Janiak.
Thank you, Representative Herr. And thank you, Senator Rasmussen, for the question. First, in the supplemental budget, there was initially $15 million put in for Tier 2 and pensions under TRA. And what the specific question is about the governor's dedication to that. So first and foremost, asking the governor and what they suspect is priorities is a great question for them. Our ongoing advocacy around pensions has been to push an ongoing target, not one-time money. We see one-time money as in that amount as a step forward, but not the solution. And so as we continue to push not only you folks on the LCPR to take action now, we will continue to push the governor's office to allocate one-time money and agree to, ongoing money so that true pension reform can happen now.
Senator Rasmussen, any follow-up?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate the response there. And yeah, I'm just curious if this is such a big priority for Education Minnesota, and we have the teacher governor. I'm just kind of wondering why this hasn't showed up in different budget proposals. So I'll continue to inquire about that. But thank you for the answer.
Thank you, Vice Chair Friends.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator Rasmussen. I believe the target sheet signed by the Majority Leader, by the Speaker of the House, and by the Governor is $31.6 million for educator pensions. Had a great conversation with Chair Herr last night. Looking forward to working with all of you on that number. Thank you.
Representative Wolgamott, can I have you include your what you raised your hand for in your closing comments, or is it something that needs to be addressed now?
I just wanted to quickly say too how much I appreciated the governor's partnership in lowering the normal retirement age last year, and want to continue to build on that partnership.
Thank you, Representative Wolgamott. Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, Representative Wolgamott and Senator Gustafson, please offer your closing comments and renew your motion. Senator Gustafson, Representative Wolgamott.
And I want to close by renewing my motion to file. Can you hear me?
We can now. You kind of go in and out sometimes.
Okay, well, Madam Chair, I just want to close by saying thank you for the opportunity to present this bill. And I want to speak directly to all of the teachers throughout our state. We see you. We so deeply appreciate everything that you have been through during these unprecedented times. You've stepped up, you've rose to the occasion, and the work that you are doing on this issue is paying off. We're going to continue to build off of the successes of last year, and we're going to do everything that we can this year to make the absolute most of the target that has been set aside for educator pensions, and we're going to continue this fight. It took us years to get into this problem that we're in, and we are in it for the long haul to work with you, make sure that you have the retirement benefits that you deserve for all the sacrifices you make and all the work that you do for Minnesota students. So thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, commission members. Thank you to all of Minnesota's teachers. Let's continue to work together to make sure that they get the benefits that reflect the work that they do for our students and for our workforce. Thank you.
Senator Gustafson.
I just want to say thank you to the committee for hearing our proposal today and for your consideration as you move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And this bill is laid over. On to our next bill and our final bill, which is House File 3808 from Representative Nadeau and Senate File 4348 from Senator Pratt. Representative Nadeau, I invite you to make a motion for the bills.
I will move that House File 3808, Senate File 4348 be laid over for possible inclusion in the Legislative Commission on Pension and Retirement Omnibus Bill.
Thank you, Representative Nadeau. Representative Nadeau and Senator Pratt, if you have any opening remarks before we go to staff presentation of the bill.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair and members. It's a pleasure to be in front of the Pension Committee today. You know, the bill in front of us right now is really a simple, straightforward bill that acknowledges and rewards teachers by creating career rules for teachers at age 62 with 30 years of service. It's the first and important step that is equally available to all teachers. This proposal builds upon the $600 million that this commission got through last legislative session and provides an option for many teachers to retire without a significant penalty. I think both bills that we've heard are really attempting to build on the work of the commission last year, and I appreciate Representative Nadeau's dogged work in this area over the interim. It does not appear, even with $31 million, that there's going to be active resources prioritized to this enhancement. And so we're really looking to pay for this bill over a long period of time. And but we feel it's a fair bill and one that's consistent with how the commission has viewed enhanced benefits in the past. We know our funding mechanism isn't what teachers want. And, you know, when this bill was originally put together, the 31 million wasn't in the joint budget, wasn't an option, but we will continue to work and identify alternatives to funding options to help lessen the impact on our teachers. And with that, Madam Chair, I know Representative Nadeau has, I believe, an amendment and several, and then his comments.
Thank you, Senator Pratt. And Representative Nadeau, I see that you do have a 1A amendment. Do you want to move that amendment?
Do, Madam Chair, I move the A1 amendment.
Okay, Representative moves the A1. Can you, do you want to describe the A1 amendment now or just get the bill in the form that you'd like for it, and then we can have your opening remarks in the comments?
Yes, and thank you, Madam Chair. This A1 amendment is really simple. It increases the employee contribution for the coordinated plan members by 1% effective 7/1/24. It adds a 62 and 30 benefit for Tier 2 members effective 7/1/25. And members, I really appreciate you allowing me to present this bill. I've worked pretty hard on this. I think it's truly the first step in stabilizing some recruitment and retention to the challenges that school districts and the state faces. I think it treats teachers who have committed the most with compounding contributions fairly. I think it creates a path that eliminates the full impact of higher actuarial reduction factors. And as we heard this morning from the presenters, it provides that. We need to provide multiple paths to full benefits for our teachers. I have had a number of town halls. I've met with thousands of teachers across the state, and a lot of them have been super supportive. Some of them have been, you know, I love this, but I don't want to pay for it, and I totally understand that. But I think without significant public investments, and we're not gonna get there. And, you know, I originally crafted this bill, I thought, with kind of an innovative sliding scale that would allow earlier teachers not to have the impact of this, and have later teachers have a larger impact on that. I found that it clearly needs more work, which is why I had to introduce the A1 amendment today. And members, teachers will pay more under this proposal. A teacher making $75,000 a year will pay $750 more per year under this proposal. But those additional contributions have an immediate impact for those members. Number one, they get a full benefit at 62 and 30 without any reductions, and they get that 3 years prior to the normal retirement age. I've created 3 examples of what I want to just walk through quickly. You know, a 35-year-old teacher that has 12 years of service, they literally have 30 years ahead of them. Under this bill, they'd have 27. And if that teacher needed to or wanted to retire at 62, they will forfeit under the current conditions, they will forfeit almost $12,000 a year if they retired at 62 without this bill. And that $12,000 reduction would be there every year for the rest of their life. If this proposal passes, this teacher will contribute an extra $750 a month, about $20,000 over the next 27 years. But they'll be able to retire 3 years early. They'll recover the total additional contribution they added to the fund in less than 2 years. For a 45-year-old teacher with 21 years of service, they face an $11,300 discount right now. They will recover that amount in 13 months. A 55-year-old teacher with 25 years of service, they will, under this bill, they'll work for 7 more years rather than 10. They will make back that additional investment in 6 months. So this, yes, it costs teachers more. But they also receive a significant benefit. Again, I completely understand the opposition to members alone for this benefit enhancement, but I don't think that alone should be the reason to oppose this bill. I'm also a public employee. I'm in a different plan. If I were afforded the opportunity to contribute 1% more of my pension, my investment would be somewhere between 6 and 2 years, and I was able to retire 3 years early, I would strongly consider that. If you take the time to read the written comments that are in the packet, you'll quickly see that the vast majority support this bill or a combination of Representative Wolgamott's bill and mine. And so I thank you again for hearing my bill, and I'm looking forward to having testimony and more comments. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Nadeau. And before we vote on the 1A amendment, I would just want to ask our Deputy Director Kelly to talk through the bill a little bit, to maybe add on to what you've already explained, and also talk through the amendment. And then we'll go ahead and vote on the amendment, and then move on to the people here to testify. So Deputy Director Kelly, if you could just explain the bill with a little bit more detail, and then we'll vote on the 1A amendment.
Thank you, Chair Herr. My name is Sean Kelly, and I'm the Deputy Director for the Commission. I'll do a quick section-by-section summary of the bill, and then explain the 1A amendment. Section 1 increases the employee contribution rate based on years of service. Under current law, the employee contribution rate is 7.75% of pay for coordinated members, or members who will receive Social Security pension based on teaching service, and 11.25% of pay for basic members, or members who will not receive a Social Security pension. The employee contribution rates are currently scheduled to increase by 0.25% of pay on July 1st, 2025. Under the bill, a teacher's employee contribution rate is dependent on years of service and will increase throughout a teacher's career. The bill creates 4 different contribution levels or service tiers. The service tiers are fewer than 10 years of service, 10 or more and fewer than 20 years, 20 or more and fewer than 30 years, and 30 or more years of service. For example, under the bill as introduced, the employee contribution rate for a newly hired teacher is 8% of pay after June 30th, 2024. When the teacher reaches 10 years of service, the teacher's employee contribution rate will increase. When the teacher reaches 20 years, the contribution rate will increase again, and so forth. Section 2 provides an unreduced annuity benefit for members that are at least 62 with 30 years of service. Section 2 also removes a provision related to early retirement reduction factors for members that are eligible for 62 and 30, which the bill makes unnecessary. I will now move over to the 1A amendment, which makes a couple of changes. The first change is that it deletes Section 1 and replaces it with a new section that increases the employee contribution rate for coordinated members by 1% of pay. As a result, after June 30th, 2024, the contribution rate for coordinated members will be 9% of pay. Under the amendment, the contribution rate increase is a one-time increase and is no longer based on years of service. In addition, the contribution rate for basic members does not increase. The amendment also excludes Tier 1 members from being eligible for the 62 and 30 benefit by adding 2 new paragraphs and making conforming changes to Section 2 of the bill. Under current law, when a Tier 1 member retires and the member's annuity amount is higher when calculated under the provisions usually used to calculate a retirement annuity for Tier 2 members, the Tier 1 member receives the higher annuity benefit. While Tier 1 members under the amendment are not eligible for the 62 and 30 benefit, the employee contribution rate increase I previously mentioned applies both to Tier 1 and Tier 2 members. Finally, the amendment delays the date a member can retire under 62 and 30 by 1 year from July 1st, 2024 to July 1st, 2025. However, the increased employee contribution rate is still effective on July 1st, 2024. The Commission's retained actuary via Actuarial Solutions estimates that approximately 345 members of TRA will become immediately eligible for an unreduced annuity on July 1st, 2024, as introduced in the bill. Under the bill, as introduced, this group of members can retire under 62 and 30 without helping to pay for the increase in liability to TRA. Under the amendment, this group of members is required to pay an increased contribution rate for 1 year prior to retiring with an unreduced annuity. Thank you, Chair Hurd. That concludes my review.
Deputy Director Kelly, is there any discussion to the 1A amendment? Seeing there is no discussion, all those in favor of adopting the 1A amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, nay. The motion is approved and the 1A amendment is adopted.
Aye.
We will now, did somebody, I heard a voice. Okay, I guess maybe that voice was accidental. We will now turn to testimony on the bill, and I will ask if our bill testifiers could keep their testimony really tight. So the first person is Emily Knudsen, Consulting Agency of VIA Actuarial Solution. Please identify yourself and please begin.
Madam Chair and Commission members, my name is Emily Knudsen, and I'm an actuarial consultant with VIA Actuarial Solutions. Would you like me to share my screen with my presentation?
Ms. Knudsen, you're doing a presentation. Is this within the 3 minutes? My apologies.
Yeah, I can do it.
Okay, all right. If you have access, please share your screen. Otherwise, Lisa can pull it up. Ms. Deslin can pull it up.
Okay. So I will skip my overview of the proposed legislation and move right into the actuarial impacts of the proposed legislation on the accrued liability and the normal cost. So we did measure the costs under three scenarios. The effect on the plan's funded status is very sensitive to future retirement patterns. The first scenario we modeled assumes that 55% of those eligible for retirement at age 62 and 30 would retire immediately. The second scenario is a little bit more conservative and assumes 70% will retire immediately. And the third assumes that 100% of those eligible would retire right away, as soon as they can. Scenarios 1 and 3 can be thought of as bookends, and the actual experience is likely to be somewhere in the middle. Because this is a new benefit, there may be higher participation in the first few years it becomes available. So here we show the estimated effect on the funded status and past service liability at each of these three scenarios. The liability amounts shown here were actually calculated by TRA's actuary. We were able to match those and confirm that they are reasonable. The increase in the unfunded liability ranges from about $600 million to just over $1 billion under the most conservative assumption. And as that stated before, the actual amount will be somewhere in the middle and will reduce the funded status about 1 to 2%. It is important to note that the funded status does decrease immediately under each scenario. Now we turn on how to pay for the benefits. So our understanding is that the proposed increase to employee contribution rates are intended to fund the new past service liability, that unfunded accrued liability, and future liability over time. The contribution sufficiency decreases under each scenario. This is because the increase in employee contribution rates are paid over our participants' entire career instead of the 30 years as prescribed in statute. The sufficiency decreases more in scenarios 2 and 3 because those retiring earlier will contribute the higher rate for a shorter period of time. So then, slide 6. So the intent and change in the benefits is reasonable. However, the funding mechanism is not considered best practice. Best practice would be to immediately fund that change in accrued liability due to past service. A lower funded status increases the risk to the plan. Increasing the employee contributions is appropriate to pay for the future benefit accruals only. There's also some intergenerational inequity in the proposed rates. So new teachers will pay that higher contribution rate for their entire career to fund these benefits. Participants that are closer to retirement will only pay the higher rates for a few years, some only even 1 to 2 years. And then just to note, it is difficult to estimate the long-term cost of the change as it is unclear how this benefit enhancement will change future retirement patterns. And so that concludes my presentation. So I'm up for taking questions.
Thank you, Ms. Knudsen. If you could just stay on, and then we will let members ask questions after the testifiers. And we do have a number of testifiers here. I'm going to actually ask the TRA testifiers to move. I'm going to move them to the end because I'd like to make sure we get through our teachers who are here today to get their testimony. And so I'm going to move to Lisa Olson first, licensed teacher for Elk River Education Association, President, Education Minnesota Pension Advisory Group Vice Chair. So Ms. Olson, if you could identify yourself and then begin your testimony.
Thank you, Chair Herr and LCPR members for giving me the opportunity to share an educator's perspective on this bill. I am Lisa Olson, a licensed Tier 2 teacher, President of the Elk River Education Association, and Vice Chair of the Education Minnesota Pension Advisory Group. A career rule is a proven way in other states and for Tier 1 educators in Minnesota to help retain long-term educators for students. Schools and educators value commitment, and our students and communities also benefit from this commitment. Educators hope for a promise in return for their service. Recruiting teachers will be more attainable, knowing there is a fair pension career rule, but not one that unfairly requires educators to pay for it, even educators who may never benefit from it, and young educators that would be losing almost 10% of their paycheck. The same educators who often make around $40,000 a year. That would not recruit educators. Along with helping with recruitment, keeping quality educators is also important, especially during this time when there are scores of educators choosing other second career paths. This is a retention strategy that we need to keep the talent that we've got. Pensions are emotional and can be divisive. Pension tension is real. I urge you not to let the complex nature of pensions get in the way of understanding the human element behind it. Pensions are not a benefit. They're a part of our compensation package that we and school districts pay for. They're an important part of our compensation package. You're receiving thousands of emails, postcards, and other outreach from educators because we're scared, we're fed up, we feel left behind, and we feel like we're unable to reach financial well-being in retirement. Educators, administrators, and schools need pension improvements that will help the profession and support the quality public education system we've all worked so hard to build. We need state investment to do that. Otherwise, we continue to pick winners and losers in our underfunded pension system with Band-Aid solutions. Solutions such as putting the costs on the back of educators who are already contributing one of the highest rates when compared to educators in other states. Educators believe that budgets reflect priorities. Do you want Minnesota educators to know that our state prioritizes education and those who provide it here in Minnesota? Please support an improved state-funded career rule for Minnesota educators. Thank you for hearing my testimony today.
Thank you, Ms. Olson. And up next is Mike Sievert, fifth grade teacher at Frase Vargas Public Schools. Please identify yourself and begin.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Mike Sievert. I'm a fifth grade teacher in Frazee. I'm here to speak for the need for a career rule as written in this bill. However, I cannot support the increase in employee contributions written in the bill. I'm 35 years old. This is my 13th year in a classroom. By the time I reach 62, I will have spent 4 decades as a public servant. I think anyone who has dedicated 40 years to public service deserves a respectable retirement. We can provide that respect through a career rule for educators. A career rule is sorely needed, as is penalty reduction. However, it should not be at the further expense of teachers. My wife and I have 4 amazing children, and as a young family, we're always working on making ends meet, paying for childcare, saving for college tuition, and more. An increase in contributions, which are already at historic highs, would make it harder for folks like me to stay in this profession. Funding any improvements through increasing teacher contribution unfairly forces current early career educators, as well as every future generation of educators, to pay more in contributions to provide a benefit that the state should be responsible for. Educator contributions are already the highest they have ever historically been, and educators are paying in more for a less flexible retirement plan. It's unlikely that we will be able to bring these contributions down again. Secondly, increasing employee contributions will also unfairly force a majority of educators to pay more for a benefit that they may not receive or will never be eligible for because they either did not start teaching before the age of 33 or could not reach the required 30 years of service. Over the last 10 years, more than 60% of Minnesota educators retired with less than 30 years of service. They should not bear the cost of a respectable retirement for career educators when they will not receive the same. They will never receive the return on their investment. Thirdly, I ask that we provide a respectable retirement for career teachers that is not funded through increased teacher contributions because Minnesota educators are already paying into a plan that is among the top 10 states in employee contributions. Minnesota educators are already consistently paying more in employee contributions than all of our neighboring states, states which also provide lower unreduced benefit age requirements and have more favorable career rules. Again, I strongly request that the legislators support a career rule for educators. My colleagues who meet the requirement for a career rule deserve an unreduced benefit for their committed service, but the method of funding that this bill uses to provide that benefit is inequitable and should not move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sievert. And up next is Jen Roos, English Language Arts Instructor in Fergus Falls Public Schools. Please identify yourself and begin.
Hi, I'm Jen Roos. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you all so much for being here this morning and allowing me to speak. I'm an educator in Fergus Falls, and I've been there since 1993, so I'm a Tier 2 educator. I still love my job. I have my health, and I look forward to school each day. Living in Fergus Falls, in the community where I teach, I see my students go on to do great things after the education they received in our schools by our teachers, like Mike, who just spoke, and Senator Rasmussen. They were both in my 7th grade language arts classes not so many years ago. I am so proud to see you both serving our community. Teachers don't retire simply because they hit a magical age or a magical dollar figure. If we were looking for money, this is not the career we'd have chosen. When I advocate for pension improvement, I am not looking for a quick out. I'm looking for a respectable option when I am ready, or when I simply can't teach anymore due to health, family, or other concerns. I'm very worried about those teachers who are set up to lose half of their pension due to our current penalty structure because they need to retire, especially some of those who missed the rule of 90 by just a few weeks or a few years. Because it's really not about getting less than Tier 1, it's about getting so much less and having paid more for many more years. In reflection to the presentation earlier, no one is saying our pension is bad at those older ages. Educators would be happy to see this committee comparing the benefit at 60 to retire at 60 and pay for our lives. Because if you ignore the human element of pensions, the members who pensions are created and sustained for, you can cut benefits for financial stability. But for financial stability for who? What is the worth of financial stability when workers don't have a competitive benefit? We can have financial stability and a great pension through state funding. Legislators are going to look at needed investment one way or another. We need ongoing state funding this year and next to provide a career rule, penalty reduction, and other improvements to not only retain teachers, but bring more young people into this profession. I cannot overstate how urgent this situation is and how educators and education officials see this as needed use of available state money, even a rainy day fund. This is a rainy day for educators, an existential problem that is currently hurting our educators, our students, and our schools. Please do everything you can to fight with us, for state investment, for either a career rule or a penalty reduction bill, or both, so we can have a brighter future to look forward to. Thank you for your time, and please support our pension this year.
Thank you, Ms. Rue. We will go back to, my apologies, Holly Dayton, Legislative Liaison for TRA. Please identify yourself and begin.
Hello again, Madam Chair and members. Again, for the record, my name is Holly Dayton. I'm the Legislative Liaison at TRA. We appreciate that Representative Nadeau afforded us opportunities to offer thoughts about this bill as it was developed. So thank you, Representative Nadeau, for your openness to that. Our actuary has calculated the cost of a 62 and 30 benefit. However, the ultimate cost of this bill would depend upon the final language and utilization of the benefit, as Ms. Knudsen explained. A greater utilization will increase the cost, which is estimated to range from $617 million to $1 billion, or $62 million to $101 million on an annual basis using projected fiscal year 2025 covered data or covered payroll. That amount does increase each year by 3%. And I wanted to note that the Kavanaugh-McDonald cost estimate dated January 12th, 2024, which is linked in the bill summary, uses fiscal year 2024 data. And you can see there are 3 cost scenarios for 62 and 30 benefit on red page 105. This benefit improvement would be funded entirely by teachers, which would add to an already high teacher contribution rate. Finally, the bill assigns a contribution rate to the teacher depending upon the member's years of allowable service credit with TRA. So there would have to be some administrative kinks worked out and potentially some burden of tracking TRA allowable service for each employee in order to assign the correct contribution rate, since currently school districts do not track that information. This concludes my comments. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak to this and the other bill.
Thank you, Ms. Dayton, and thank you to all of our testifiers today. I know that when teachers take their time out to testify, they are taking time from their classrooms, and so we appreciate you making time to be here. I will now move us over to member questions. Members, please raise your hand if you have any questions for our bill authors. I do not see any hands up, so that I do not see any discussion. So Representative Nadeau and Senator Pratt, would you like to offer any closing remarks or comments for your bill?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm gonna give Representative Nadeau the final word because this is he's really put in the work on this bill, and I think he deserves that credit. But just a couple of thoughts as I've been listening to some of the comments. And I absolutely agree with the testifier that, when we look at pensions, it should be considered a part of our compensation and not necessarily as a benefit. What I appreciate about the bill that's in front of you today are a couple of things, right? Our Senator Frentz mentioned, $31 million in one-time funding for the pensions bill, and that's a welcome start, but it's going to fall short of what we need in order to create a rule. In fact, we're struggling in the fact that we're facing a $1.5 billion structural surplus, which is going to make anything in the tails extremely difficult to fund. And so what I really appreciate about the work that Representative Nadeau has done, and I've talked to my teachers as well, who are cautiously supportive of the change, but if you look in your packets, member, you'll find a number of rank and file teachers who support this change, because it doesn't just create a new benefit that puts the pension fund at risk in the future, but creates a stream that eventually pays for this benefit and creates the rule that we heard is so important to recruitment and retention. A rule that is both reasonable and attainable. And so, members, I request that you support this bill, and I just again want to thank Representative Nadeau for his work on this.
Representative Nadeau, if you want to offer closing comments and renew your motion.
Thank you, Chair Hurd. Thank you, Senator Pratt. And I really want to thank the chair, especially for working with me through this process. The VAI actuaries, the teachers, all the teachers that I've met with, both the ones that have supported and opposed and said we need to do better. And this bill, members, it creates a rule. That's what it does. It focuses first on those long-term teachers who don't have time to wait. And there's time for us to work with those the second career teachers. But at this point, I think it's time that we step up, and teachers are willing to do it. And I will continue to try to find state funds that will literally reduce the cost to members if this bill continues to go forward. I don't think that the greatest first step is reducing, retirement penalties down to a 30% discount. From 50, that there's not a lot of teachers that are going to take advantage of that. And if they do, great. But this is again, I want to thank members for letting me present this bill. I'll continue to work. I appreciate it, Madam Chair. I renew my motion that this be included in the legislative pensions omnibus bill.
Thank you, Representative Nadeau. So Representative Nadeau renews his motion to lay over House File 3808, Senate File 4348 as amended. Thank you all, and this bill is laid over as amended. That concludes our business for today, members. Our next commission hearing will be on Tuesday, April 2nd. Again, that's Tuesday, not Monday, April 2nd, starting 6:30 p.m. that night, with a number of bills to process as we develop our omnibus pension and retirement bills. So seeing no further business in front of this committee, this meeting is adjourned.